Incorporation USA. He is the founder of Orai. He was recently named Forbes 30 under 30. Mr. Paritosh studied computer science at Drexel University, USA, and started Orai in his third year of college. At Orai, Mr. Paritosh wrote the core technology behind the product and now manages a team of 8 individuals across the world. He is very passionate about building products that people love and relishes the challenges that come up in doing so every day.
Hi, Prati.
Hi.
Should I get started?
Yes, now we can see you. Thank you, sir, for your kind consent and valuable time. May I now request you to please address the participants?
For sure. Thank you for that great introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm Paritosh. And what I'll do over this call is I'll try to give a very frank overview of like my journey as I went through building Orai, things I learned, all the highs, all the lows, and then talk about some of the lessons I've learned. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll stop in the middle time to time to answer anything that you have. And at the end, we'll also have a separate Q&A session. If you want to ask questions later, you can, of course, do that then. The one thing I wanted to do is quite often when you read about startups or you read about founders inside the news, inside the press, we always hear things from a hindsight bias, because when you've gotten somewhere, you don't realize all the things and all the issues that you had to go through to get someplace. So, and also we always mostly hear all the rosy stories. Hey, the startup raised this much, or they've gotten there. But the reality for most companies is very different. Almost more than 90% of startups fail. But what are the things that cause startups to fail? What are the things that go wrong? Even right now, I'm going through that journey where we're still figuring out getting to somewhere successful where we want to be. So as I'm in this journey, I'd love to share things that I've learned, what I've learned so far, things that I've experienced. And yeah, let's get started. So the starts, as Prachi mentioned, I went to study computer science in my undergrad at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And I knew that I liked programming, but I really learned programming inside college. Before that, I didn't really know as much about programming, but I knew that I really liked that field. So that was something that clicked for me, and I feel lucky that way. Because a lot of people, when they go to college, they realize, hey, this isn't the field I really wanted to do. But for me, programming was always like a first love and something I still enjoy doing a lot. And as I was learning, I used to try to go to different events inside college. I'm not a very extroverted person. I'm quite introverted. But I tried to put myself out there just so that I could start building a better network in college. So I used to try to go to different events, different places. And at some of these events, that's where I met my co-founder. We were actually on the same dorm floor. We didn't have the same room, but we were on the same floor. So we knew each other a little bit, but we started seeing each other quite often at these events. And near the end of our second year, we decided that, hey, why don't we room together? Because we see each other at different events. Why don't we stay together and maybe we'll work on some interesting ideas and build something cool? So that's what we started doing. And we went to this event, which is like a hackathon at a nearby university. For people who don't know what a hackathon is, essentially you, along with people you meet maybe at the event, or you go in with a team, and you try to work on any idea, try to build something in 2 nights or something. So you would start on a Friday, and by Sunday you have to have a product or something to demo and show that, hey, this is something you built. And it's kind of like a small competition. So this was a pretty big one. There were like 300-400 participants-ish in there. And at that point, at that hackathon at like 1 a.m. in the night, we had this idea that why don't we build something that helps people practice their presentations or their pitch in virtual reality. At that point, I was doing an internship, and at that internship, I was learning virtual reality, writing code for that. So that's what we did. We, over 2 nights, barely sleeping, we built a quick application in which you had a stage in front of you, and you could upload like a PDF presentation. And in virtual reality, you would see an audience in front of you. and you can start pitching and speaking and practicing your communication skills. So we had this idea that a lot of people struggle with communication. And even as I was at my internship, I realized that there were very, very smart people working, but a lot of them struggled to get their ideas across or get buy-in in their ideas from their bosses because they weren't able to communicate their ideas effectively. They weren't able to get the impact they wanted. So that's where we started the idea of what became Urai. And this was still in my third year of college. So we started slowly working towards it along with my studies. I was trying to do it a little bit here, there, over weekends, over whatever time I had, or trying to not study and work on this because I was very good at procrastinating. So that's what I used to do. And then one fine day we went to another competition, which is like a business plan competition. And it was inside the city where my college is, which is Philadelphia. And we pitched our idea that, hey, we want to build an application that helps people become better communicators. And at that competition, we came second and we won $2,000. So we were like, wow, we didn't realize that, hey, this idea has potential. And we started talking to people about the idea. There were people from the industry, there were experts, and we started getting good feedback from them that, hey, you should do this, you should do this, you should talk to this person. So that started opening our minds that, hey, maybe this idea has some potential. So one thing we started doing was we started applying to as many pitch competitions as we could over the next 6 months, next 7 months. And we started going there and we started winning some of them. So we won 2,000 here, 4,000 there. Then we won some bigger ones where you won 10,000, 15,000. So overall, at the end of the day, in like 6-7 months, we raised about like $80,000 just through pitching at different competitions. And that's what kind of provided us with the initial money to start putting inside the application, because we didn't know if this had potential or not. So we didn't necessarily want to start tapping into our own savings. We just thought, hey, if we want to build this, what is the scrappiest way we can find in order to raise some money to start building this? And that's what we did. And that's where what I was doing is I had an internship. Again, this is the next year. So I had this 2016. I had an internship, so I would work 9 to 5, and then after 5, I would come back and I would start working on this idea over the nights. And this was kind of my routine for at least 6 months, where I was working and then I was working on the idea. So it was essentially 12-hour work week for at least 6 months for me. So this was fun, but one thing we really realized during that phase is that you should never hesitate from sharing your ideas with people. Ideas are cheap. Ideas are nothing. The thing that really matters is your execution. Are you able to really take that idea and build it into something that really works? That's something we learned during that phase, that there were so many people with so many good ideas, but half of them, people were not going anywhere because they didn't have the execution. Okay, so this is us so 2015 is where we went to the hackathon. 2016 is where we raised all this money from going to competitions. And we started now working on this seriously. And I had me and my co-founder, Tanish, who, as I mentioned earlier on, we started rooming together in college. So we were both working on this. And then I realized that, hey, I can't do all of this on my own because I have to study, I have to do all of that. And I'm not super good with iOS development because we wanted to build an application then. So we started hiring people for building this out. Initially, we started off with outsourcing. So for me, that's how I started learning how to delegate tasks, how to manage people. It was mostly trial by fire. I do believe I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't know how to do any of that. I also didn't have any industry experience per se. So I didn't know the good practices, the best practices. So it was all just learning by trial and error, making a lot of mistakes, and definitely losing money because I didn't know how to execute a lot. But it was a great learning experience going through that. Then my first real experience came when in my fourth year, we started hiring some interns to do this. And the mistake we made was we hired like 6, 7 interns. And the issue there is that interns aren't like industry professionals. They don't always know how to get things done. So instead of like really moving things forward, I was spending half my time correcting things that people were doing. And that's not something you want to do at an early stage when you're just trying to build out an idea and trying to figure it out. But it was still, again, a learning experience. We made mistakes, but That's really where I learned management skills to in order to give tasks, figure things out with people. And so this is now this is the next year. This is 2017, and in 2017 is where we also made our first hire. What we did was essentially we put up a job posting online and we opened it up to everyone anywhere in the world. One thing that I'd gotten feedback on was there's a lot of good talent out there if you don't limit yourself to the location to a location. And I'd read this book called Remote by co-founder of a company called Basecamp, and he really explained how do you make a remote team work well for you. So our first hire was Daniel. Daniel is based in South Korea, and he was also super young. He was like 20, 22, 23, actually maybe a year older than me. So we hired. He was working in South Korea, completely different time zone. My time zone was different. So we would have like a 3 hour period or 2 hour period where we were overlapping. And that's where we would do all our communication. I would give him all the tasks that we need to get done, and he would work on them over his time. And then the next morning or sometime again, we would connect and we would figure things out. So over time, we started hiring more people remotely because we were starting to make that work. We were starting to scale that uh, culture inside our team, and we were finding some really good talent. If so, in that way, we were saving also money, but we were also finding really good people who wanted to work on interesting ideas, but maybe didn't have those types of companies in the location they were at. So our second hire, Alex, he is from Spain, and that was our initial team for a while. And in 2017, we also launched our app in the App Store. We didn't necessarily monetize it at that point. We wanted to learn how things go. If you're getting good reviews, you're getting good feedback, we're getting a lot of people in. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Hey, will this really work out? So everything we were doing was still testing at that point in time. And luckily, we also had our college, which is supporting us, and they gave us an office space. So most of my time, most of the days, I wasn't even going home. I would just end up sleeping in the office, wake up, try to work, go to the gym, shower there, come back, continue working, either school or this. And 2018 was when I finished my college, and along with that, we were ready to take the next step. And the next step for us came in the form of a startup accelerator called Techstars. I'll talk a little bit about Techstars because it definitely had a very big and profound impact on our company. Techstars is what essentially they do is they set up a program and they have some industry partnerships with a lot of companies across the US, and they're actually across the world. They even have one in Bangalore right now. So in Techstars, you pitch to them, and there are essentially 10 companies selected out of like hundreds of applications. And these 10 companies then get mentored by people who have been in startups, who've done well, who've sold companies. So we started this 3-month program with Techstars where they gave us around $200,000 in funding, and they really mentored us. They really helped us understand our idea, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. There were in-house entrepreneurs who had actually sold companies and who were there just to mentor us full time. So that was very helpful. And over that point, we also hired a couple of people, and we at that point became a 6-7 person team, trying to build out an application which gives people feedback on the communication skills. During Techstars, we learned a lot. We learned how to start building a product, how to really get some metrics, how to measure that. Hey, are we going the right direction? Are we going the wrong direction? So this was a big learning experience for us. And at the end of those 3 months, we started raising. We realized that hey, this idea has potential. We're starting to gain traction. We had at that point around 100,000 users, which like 1 lakh users across the world. And we thought, hey, let's do something with this. Let's actually make it grow. Let's actually build this into a proper company. And at that point, we were also young. I was 22. My co-founder was 24. So we were all a very young group. And the hardest thing with startups is fundraising. Oh yeah, we want to raise funds. So when we had momentum, we went to the cycle of fundraising, and we started talking to investors across the US, trying to figure out who's a good investor, who's a bad investor. That's a really important thing to go through if you ever go into fundraising, is finding people who you really like and who you have a good fit for. You need to find investors who don't try to force their way of thinking on you. You need to find investors who will let you make mistakes, who will not push you, and who are good to you, good to communicate with, like people who you can actually have conversations with, good or bad, without thinking about, oh, what would my investor think about it if I told them the reality of the company. You have to be honest with your board and your investors. So that's something very important to focus on if you ever go towards fundraising and finding investors. The other thing you'll realize about investors is that they're essentially placing a bet on your company. And let's say in a year, they place 10 bets, they're expecting only one to succeed. So for them, they try to make all the companies the one, they don't know which one will work out. But to some extent, you are not the center of their world. They will make 10 bets. They need one to succeed. And if that one succeeds, generally the return is enough that it covers the cost or the money that they lose in the other nine companies. So that's kind of how investor mindsets work. But fundraising also changes things because your expectations are higher. Now instead of building a business that just makes money, you have to figure out how to build a venture-backed business. So by the end of December 2018, we raised $2.3 million in funding. And that made us feel like, hey, we are at the top of the world. We now have funding. We have an idea that we believe works. And let's go out and let's build the awesome company. And we had all these ideas and dreams and expectations of what we would do. Up to this point, the story all seems like, yeah, this is all sounding good. This is all going to the right direction. So this is where I feel like we made some big mistakes at this point. So now we have funding. The first thing we did, we started scaling our team. And that was a mistake at that point in time, and we didn't realize it then. But we scaled our team. We hired some expensive talent because we felt, hey, we have the money. We should get some good people and start building it. But what we didn't realize is that we didn't have something pivotal called product market fit. We had a product, but we didn't know who exactly was the market for it. And that caused us a lot of pain because 5 months later, we weren't meeting our goals. We didn't really know who we were selling to, what we were building for, and we had to actually let half of the new people that we hired go because we were realizing, hey, we are burning too much money, and we're not getting enough results for it. So that is definitely a big experience that you realize as you go into this process, that if things are going in your direction, it doesn't mean that they will continue going in there. You have to really assess at every point in place where you are, what you're doing, and do you have a sustainable strategy to go and to scale forward. I'll quickly take a pause here to check if there are any questions from anybody. I don't see anything in chat. So I'll continue. Yeah. So that's where we were in 2019, where 5 months after raising funding, we had to let some people go, and we were very confused. Hey, are we going the right direction? Are we going the wrong direction? We actually were getting good enterprise deals, big enterprise deals, but at the end of the day, people were not using our product. People didn't have an idea. People would buy it but not use it, and that becomes a problem because if you need to renew your contract, that contract is not going to renew if people don't use. But one thing we were careful with after that was we were careful with our spending. We didn't lose too much money. And at the end of 2019, essentially a year into our funding, we realized that we haven't been able to figure out a market for a product. And if you don't have a market for a product, it's not going to work out. So we had that frank conversation with our investors. And we were like, hey, we don't know where this product is going. We don't know if this has potential. So they suggested what you need to do is do a pivot. Find another market, find anything interesting that you found, and try to build another product. So essentially, within a year, everything that we had done up to this point, we were told that, hey, this is not working out, do something else. The investors, because they were good investors, they believed in us, they liked us, so they let us continue and didn't take the money back. So that was great for us. We learned a lot. That was great for us because we could continue building on a new product, building on figuring out a new problem. And then this was start of 2020. Everything, of course, went wrong in 2020 because of coronavirus and everything. And for us, we spent most of 2020 trying to validate or trying to figure out a new product. But this time we were trying to do it a bit differently. We were trying to validate the product and validate the market before we actually build it out. And I'll talk about market and product validation a bit later once I talk about some of the lessons I've learned in specific detail. But that was a hard period because 8 months we were just trying to talk to people, trying to see if they liked our idea, didn't like our idea, and we got stuck in something called analysis paralysis, where we were getting so many insights from so many people here and there that we weren't able to figure out what is the right direction. And then again, 7 months into it, we had a board conversation with the board, and we realized, hey, this is again not going in a good direction. And again, because we had good investors, they were like, no worries, we like your team, figure out a new idea, a new product. And this was in October 2020. And in October 2020, we started working on different ideas. My co-founder was working on a different product. I started working on a different product. And at the end of the day, we settled on a new idea. And that's what we're starting to pursue as we are going forward in 2021. So the good thing that we did for us is we maintained our spending. We realized early on that you shouldn't burn money just because you've raised it. You need to be very careful with it. At this point, here we are, still trying to figure out building what a good product is, and is there a good market for it? But that's what startups are about. Is if at the end of the day, if you're able to nail down product market fit, then you've really got something that's going to work out. Otherwise, if not now, if not at day one, 3 years, 4 years down the line, something will not work out, and you will end up being one of the 90% of the startups that shut down. Hopefully, that doesn't happen with us, but this is kind of the journey that I've had at least so far. In this time, of course, we used to get a lot of press because the idea that we were working on was very cool, helping people become better communicators. I'll also talk a little bit about the product that we built early on. It's essentially an app in which you can speak. It's called ORAI, and you can download it on the Play Store or App Store, and you can speak. And within as you've presented your speech, within 10 to 15 seconds, it gives you feedback on your communication skills. So it tells you about your use of ums and ahs. It tells you if you're speaking too fast, too slow, your energy variation, your pacing, your confidence, clarity. So it analyzes all those things and gives you instant feedback on how you're speaking. That's kind of what our product was, and that product still continues. We do make money out of it, but because we are a venture-backed company, we have investors have higher expectations for us. So we have to figure out a different idea that can actually scale and work out. And that's kind of what I'm in the process of doing right now. So this is kind of a bit about my story so far, trying to build a good product, to build a good company. So someone put a question in chat. Still, the product is low cost. If we compare it with the market, what makes it so? Product cost is low because this is technology. If you compare it with like a speech coaches are in person, so that's of course way more expensive. As technology, we were able to easily have good margins because we're just analyzing data on our servers and processing it. So that wasn't a problem, and it's a lower cost that actually gives us an advantage, because if you wanted to become a better communicator, you would go out and you would have to find some time on your calendar every week to go and learn public speaking skills with some coach, and most people don't have time for that. So instead of going and engaging in that sort of time-consuming activity, you could just have an application that learns from your phone. Okay, so this is I guess my journey so far. How are we doing with time? We're 32 minutes in. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about the couple of lessons I learned or some of the good feedback that I'd gotten. Number one is you should never start a startup or a company because it's the cool thing to do, or because if you want to impress people. Startups are incredibly hard. They take a lot out of you. you're waking up, sleeping, just thinking about what to do the next day. Uh, are you going in the right direction? There is an immense amount of self doubt that you're going to have to go through. And more often than not, you're going to have to learn how to deal with that yourself. And that's just a very harsh reality that a lot of people don't talk about in the press. But it's something I guess anyone in a new business has to figure out. But that's the reality. So never start a startup because it's the cool thing to do. They are incredibly hard. Second thing you have to really learn is to work with people. My co-founders were very different people. They have different way of thinking. So you have to learn how to disagree with someone, but still commit to a direction. You can't go on your own way because then you're going to have a lot of conflict in your startup and you're not going to achieve anything. Other thing I talked about, ideas are worth really nothing. Execution is everything. I felt we had a really cool idea with Orai, with the core application, but we weren't able to make it work. Perhaps our execution was failing somewhere. Most likely it was that, and we were just not able to make it work. You also have to be a really good listener. Uh, there are two aspects to it, though. One, you have to know that hey, maybe the ideas that I have aren't always the best ideas. You have to listen to the real feedback that you're getting from your users. If someone says that, hey, I don't like this, and you ignore it because you think you know better, that's a big mistake. And you have to really listen to the problems that people are facing. But not everything people will tell you is right, because as Henry Ford had a very good quote that if I were to ask people what they wanted, instead of saying I want a car, they would say I want a faster horse, because that's their frame of mind. So it's a very hard balance to know what is good feedback and what is just things people are making up. You just have to learn that skill as you start talking to people. And the biggest lesson of everything that I learned is to validate your startup idea before building anything. A really good book I would recommend for this is The Startup Owner's Manual. One of my co-founders, he suggested the book to me, and essentially it breaks down how to validate everything in your startup, from the product to the market to the business model to any channel partners that you can go out with. The way it works is you write down everything that you know as a hypothesis, and then your goal is to test, hey, will this hypothesis work out? Can I how can I make sure before building anything, before building out a full-fledged company or product, can I make sure that a market for this really exists? Can I make sure that this product will really work out? And it goes really deep down into how you can run cheap tests, maybe by running quick ads, or maybe by talking to people, getting user interviews, figure out how can you validate a startup idea before before actually building a company. And that really is the step that most people skip, because we believe that we have the best idea and we know everything about it, and then year down the line, 2 year down the line, things really don't work out because instead of really understanding market reality, you went with your own vision, and in 99% of the cases that just doesn't work. And finally, the last lesson that I still find hard to capture, but it's just a reality, is that there is no silver bullet solution that you'll find for a startup. Every startup is different. You can't read a book that will tell you, hey, how to run the startup. You'll have your own challenges. And if you look for a silver bullet that, hey, if I just do this, everything will work out. I try to do that, and I just end up in the search for that silver bullet, but don't really end up making things better. So whatever I'm telling you, uh, that's not like the right way to do things. Everyone will have their own way of figuring things out, but there are just a lot of things to keep in mind as you build a company. And yeah, that's kind of all the big lessons that I learned as I was doing uh, Orai and through the journey. Let's see if there are any questions. And Prachi, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yes. Um, that was quite detailed behind the
Yeah.
story of your success, and you just walked through through your journey. So I hope this will help a lot to a lot of young aspiring entrepreneurs. So a lot of questions you have already answered, but I would like to know, uh, this is related to your product. Like today, when the world has moved from to a virtual work
Mhm.
and study mode, effective communication has become even more important.
Mhm.
So how has the new normal changed things for Arai?
Yeah. So luckily, in terms of the working style, we were lucky that we were already a very remote team. People were in every continent to some extent, except Antarctica and Africa, I guess. But yeah, we were very split out. So that really helped us. That really didn't make a big difference in the working of the company. But what it did make a difference was in terms of our clients, because instantly budgets were cut for things like training and uh, anything related to marketing. So a lot of budget cuts were happening, and that affected our sales because we were selling Arai to a lot of enterprises as a way of employee training. And yeah, so that made a big impact. But you just have to bide your time. And as the lucky thing, the place where we were at, we made sure that we weren't like burning too much money every month. We were very conservative with the money that we had in the company, and we just weathered through the storm. Uh, there's no, I don't see that. There's no good. Yeah, you just have to figure it out.
Right. Um, so, so you've said that there were highs and lows.
Mhm.
Uh, so what would you, if you had a chance, what
Yeah,
would you do differently? Like,
yeah. I think I would spend more time on validation and less time building things out to really figure out. Like, you don't want to be in a position where you build a company, you raise funding, and 1.5 year later or 1 year later, you realize, hey, guys, there isn't really a good, strong paying market that will continue and grow your product over the next 5 years, 4 years. That's not a position anybody wants to be in. So yeah, the first thing I would do is figure out, uh, validate it. Just focus on validation and change when I learn something is not going in the right way. Like if I just continue that, okay, somehow things will work out, they won't. You just have to change when you realize a fact or when you see data that your assumption was wrong and there is no market or this is not the right product to build, whatever it is.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And so longevity is quite important in business right now.
Mhm.
So how does one have a foresight to create a sustainable business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the one of the biggest things is to, uh, sometimes there are two types of products if you think about it. Some are painkillers and some are vitamins. So painkillers is, as a company or as a person, you really need something because without it, you're just in a big mess, and it's making your life very, very hard to do your job without something. And sometimes there are vitamins that, hey, you can do something, but if you have that, it's good. It's a nice to have, not a must have. So if you build things that are must haves and they integrate in people's workflows, such that they don't have to do extra effort to get something done, or at least that effort is less than how they're solving the problem currently, then you can start building a product which has longevity because it's solving a real problem for people. So trying to find and validate that your idea is in that direction, that allows you to do that. That's my best guess at that question.
Yes. I think there's one question from our participant.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
What books? Okay, I'll scroll up and see. So it's not necessary to have a completely formulated idea before you begin your journey. Absolutely not. There is 99% chance that your idea will change and modify as you start your company. And if it doesn't, then most likely you're doing something wrong. So have an hypothesis, have an assumption of an idea, and start your journey by making sure that that idea is realistic and it'll work out, and try to do it in the quickest and cheapest way possible. There's also a really good book called Lean Startup by Eric Ries. He explains his journey uh, trying to validate fast, trying to validate quickly, and the mistakes he made. So I would also recommend doing that. But 100%, you never have to have a completely formulated idea. Your idea will change as a startup. That's what my experience has been, that it'll change almost every year. You'll learn new information that will change you. What books have you read when you were building your startup and have inspired and motivated you? I tried to read like one book a month about random things for like the past 2 years at least. So there have been a lot of books, but the ones I would recommend is there's a book called Start with the Why by Simon Sinek. A really good book. He talks about how you should question things in the right way to understand why you're doing something, why people do different things. Startup Owner's Manual, as I recommended. Uh, there's a book called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. He also talks about how, let's say you have an idea, how do you, it uses a framework called jobs to be done, which essentially says that every person, by using a product or by using anything, is trying to solve a job for them. So, for example, he said that in the US, people were buying milkshakes while driving to work because they needed something to drink while they were going from home to office. That was the job that milkshakes was solving in their life, or that they needed a quick snack because they skipped breakfast. So you have to figure out what job your product is solving for people, and then that allows you to really solve the problem better. So that's one I would also recommend. Uh, yeah, otherwise, I don't know. I don't have other books that are coming to the top of my mind, but those are ones I would really recommend. Okay, then in the Q&A, what was your product and segmentation? I think I talked quite a bit about that early on, so I'm not sure if there's anything I could add here. Where did you spend your time before I started the company? I was in college. That was my first 1.5 years of college. Uh, I would spend a bunch of time either studying or going to, or just, I would work on a lot of side projects because I felt that along with college, I was learning as much, if not more, by just trying things out. And my roommate was super smart. He was like uh, way smarter than me in my second year. So he would just have all these random ideas and we would try to work on different things when we were done with studies. So yeah, I would just try to build random side projects. Uh, yeah, and I was talking about the Orai app. If that was the last question, but I wish. Yeah, that's. I feel like we covered all the questions so far.
I think people would also like to know that since this journey is not easy,
Mhm.
so how do you keep yourself motivated?
I will admit there are a lot of points where you think about what am I doing? What are you quitting? Like, should I just quit everything? Should I do something else? I think one, it's being honest with yourself and thinking about and knowing why are you doing this. Like, what is your reason behind doing this? It could be anything. There's no wrong answer. It could be because you want to help the world. It could be because you want to make a lot of money. So at the end of the day, you need to know why are you doing something, and at that point, also question, hey, do I have a better path of getting where I want to? If not, then that automatically somehow gives you the motivation. And also realizing is the other thing that you realize is you're not alone. There are almost everybody else is going through some sort of these problems, self-doubt, confusion, and talking to people is one of the best things to kind of get out of that demotivation state, because then you realize that, hey, maybe you're making your problems too big, even though they are actually real. You're overthinking, and overthinking is the biggest killer, I would say, in terms of demotivating yourself. Yeah.
We have another question.
Was there such a moment where you thought of leaving the idea? How did you come up with that? I'm not sure what the second part of the
So,
question means. Uh, if you could clarify, that would be great. But yeah, there were a couple of moments, even last year, where I thought about leaving the idea, leaving the approach. But you, the other thing also is to give time, not make rash decisions. So I would, at that point, I would be like, okay, I acknowledge the fact that I'm having these thoughts. Don't try to bury them, and then take a week to think about that. Okay, why am I having these thoughts? What is the reason? What triggered that thought in my mind? And then it helps you think through. And sometimes maybe the right decision is to leave the idea. Yeah, for me so far, I haven't ended up at the point where I'm like, okay, I have to take off.
Any more questions? So I have one more
Mhm.
question where so so your business, what I think your business is oriented towards societal impact because you're helping people, young professionals or students to uh, do better in their like
Communication skills.
yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
I need it. So
That was the goal, right? That is still the goal. That hey, we want
Mhm.
to have an application that helps people communicate better. Because even when I was in the US, although I could speak good English, speaking English and then really communicating and expressing your ideas,
Right,
those are two very different things. And
right,
I also wasn't like great at that. I realized that as I was working as I was doing my internships. So, and it's not just people like Indians or whoever who have English as a second language. Even over there, people who were born in the US, they struggle with expressing their ideas and getting real buy-in. So yeah, that's the goal. And then of course, the second goal is I want to build something sustainable that I can make money out of and grow and have a successful business. Those are two drivers for me, at least.
right. So what's next for Rai after the
Uh,
pandemic? So,
yeah, for us, right now we're building a separate product as well, which is again, which we are now trying to validate properly. While this product, to some extent, we have put on auto because we've pretty much built the entire technology out of it. It works, it's stable. So we've run it. We're just keeping it running and it's bringing revenue for us. But we realize that this is not going to scale beyond the current size that it is. And we need, if you want to continue something or if you want to build something else, then we need to start a different product. So while we're keeping Orai running and maintaining it, we're building a completely new product. So the company will have two different product lines. So,
it's amazing. And I
yeah.
saw that it has a lot of languages can be used. I mean, anybody in the world can use it
Yeah,
and get feedback.
we only support English, but we did add support for accents because
Oh, okay.
that allows people from across the world to be able to speak in different styles and not get because if you look at English in India, we use a lot more accents and we have our energy variation is very different from someone in the UK or someone in the US. So you shouldn't get penalized for that because people in your entire country speak English that way. And it's not wrong. It's just different based
Hmm.
on context.
Hmm. Okay. All right. I think the time's up.
All right.
Also,
I think there is
yeah.
one last
Yeah.
question, so I'll quickly answer
Okay.
that. Is it
Yeah.
better to have a skeletal product before you approach an investor, or should you invest in an approach? It depends on what you're seeking. If you're seeking seed investment, you could go with skeletal product, but then you need to have some validation or some business plan or map that you can say that, hey, if I get this money, this is what I'll do with it. So yeah, you can take a skeletal product to investor. You should build investor connections early. That's fine because then you got them invested into your idea. Does or I mean or oral AI? Yeah, it's yeah orator and AI. So that was what Orai is, OR and AI. That's it.
All right. Um, Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm Prachi Vora, on behalf of IME, would like to thank you a lot for this wonderful, incredible session. I think there have been a lot of takeaways and you've suggested books, your lessons through your journey. So many students will get help from that. And sincere thanks to participants for motivating us by being a part of this series. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Prachi ma'am. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and all. Thank you so much.